Hello, I'm Sir Dylan.
And I'm Sir Kiyan.
And this is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with a hermaphrodite hexapod.
We forgot to say of TARDIS.
Yeah, it's just a formality. Anyway, this week we watched The Curse of Peladon.
Which was written by Brian Hayles.
Directed by Lenny Main.
And aired in January and February of 1972.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this serial, actually.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite Third Doctor serial so far.
To completely blank. Be honest. Don't really remember a lot of the things that happened, though.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because a lot of the episodes just end up blending together for me. It just felt like one big chunk of stuff.
Well, maybe that was because there wasn't much filler-ish content like there has been in many Third Doctor serials so far.
Probably.
Once again, the 4-episode serial proves to be
the superior method.
Yeah. Maybe we enjoyed this because it was more political in nature. I'm not sure if that's the case.
Or maybe because it wasn't set on Earth and it was actually good not set on Earth serial, unlike Colony in Space, which is just eh. Yeah, so that should lead us into... It begins with the TARDIS materializing on a mysterious planet that you later find out is called Peladon.
Yeah, it actually begins with What's-His-Face getting killed.
Oh, yeah, it begins... Oh, yeah!
So basically there's... Peladon is the planet it takes place on.
But it's also the name of the king, just saying.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of vaguely medieval. They know about like extraterrestrials and space travel and whatnot, so it's sort of like sci-fi fantasy-ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it takes place in the king's castle, which is this, I don't know how to say Transylvanian, but like
Gothic.
I guess Gothic. I'm just thinking like it's separated from its what do I want to say here? It's separated from like it's not a castle within like a city. It's separated from whatever they're ruling.
Yeah.
It's on this dangerous looking mountain. And sort of isolated. Mm-hmm. And the king, Peladon, or the not yet king, I know there's a term for that, but again, I'm blanking on it. He's advised by these two guys, Torbis and Hepesh.
Yeah. Chancellor Torbis and High Priest Hepesh.
Who are about to, they're soon planning on crowning him king because his father died or whatever, and he needs to be crowned king. And they're also about to enter the Galactic Federation.
Right. And Torbis is like, yeah, let's join the Federation. And Hepesh is like, no, let's not.
Isn't it Hepesh?
Hepesh.
Hepesh.
It's spelled with an E. Damn it. I thought it was an A. Hepesh?
Some vaguely biblical, to be honest.
Hepesh?
Hepesh.
Damn you, Brian Hayles. Hepesh is adamantly against joining the Federation. But Torbis goes off to his chambers and gets killed on his way there.
Mysteriously. Wonder why. Wonder who could have done that.
Anyway, the TARDIS shows up, and Joe's
on a cliff.
Joe's complaining about them leaving because she was about to go out in the town with Mike Yates.
Right, and she's wearing this, vaguely princess-looking outfit. I'm sure that doesn't come into play at all. But yeah, so.
Well, she was going out for a date. You want to look your best on a date, don't you? She's going out with Mike Yates. It's hard to impress a man of military stature.
Hard to impress Mike Yates. But yeah, so they think they're back on Earth. Well, Joe's actually not quite sure. She's like, "Are you sure we're back on Earth, Doctor?" He's like, "Of course we are." They look on the scanners and open the door, and they're actually placed above the hundreds of feet drop.
Yeah, and they jump out of the TARDIS and it falls off a cliff. the second time in this show the TARDIS has fallen off a cliff.
When was the first time with
The first
monk?
Doctor's era. Remember that episode with shoot. I think it was the Mythmakers almost.
Mythmakers, it was in a field. And they got captured.
It definitely fell off a cliff like in the first Doctor's era.
I think you're thinking of the
No. It was definitely a time the TARDIS fell off a cliff.
Yeah, the serial with the monk.
Was it the one with the... I don't think it was the one with the monk.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That one, it got submerged when the tide came in.
Yeah.
I don't remember then. Huh.
I think it was in Ian and Barbara's run that it fell off a cliff. And I think it was during Vicky's era too, but I don't remember exactly. Might have been the Romans, actually. Oh well. It definitely,
We don't know.
It definitely fell off a cliff before, I remember that much.
So, where were we? Oh, yeah, the TARDIS falls, and we learned that it's indestructible because, or I learned at least, I didn't know, because Joe mentioned, well, I guess we're not getting home now. The Doctor's like, don't be silly, Joe, the TARDIS is indestructible. Which is good, because otherwise they'd just be stranded on Peladon forever. Or at least
Yeah, that
until
would suck, given the ending of this serial.
Well, yeah, for Joe. And for the Doctor, too.
Anyway, they
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
they make their way into some tunnels, and they spy who else but the Ice Warriors.
Right, the Galactic Federation Assembly, not assembly, but
Delegates.
the delegates show up at Castle Peladon. I don't know if that's what it's called, but that's what we're calling it now.
Okay, I mean...
And among them are the Ice Warriors.
From Mars.
Right. The other two were just named after they didn't have proper names. They were just named after their planets.
Yeah.
Or stars,
Yeah.
I guess. Because we have Alpha Centauri, who, well, we'll get into their descriptions, but we also have Arcturus.
I've
I
never
thought it
heard
was
of
Arcturus, but...
I've never heard of Arcturus before this serial,
Yeah, me neither.
but they all have silly voices.
So, well, we can start with the Ice Warriors, because we've seen them before, but not previously in color. And I found out this week that they were green. I thought they were black. But no, they're green.
Yeah, I knew they were green. Mainly because they showed up in the reboot once and they were green, so I knew they were green.
Yeah,
Still with that "you must come with us" voice.
except it's not as bad in this serial because they don't have as many lines.
That's okay.
That's one thing I want to get into later. Is I actually really liked the Ice Warriors in this serial, which is a complete 180 from how I
Yeah,
felt
it is.
about them before. Anyway,
Hated them before.
Anyway, I think these were some of the same Ice Warriors we'd seen before, because we had Islier. I think he was the controller from before, from the Seeds of Death, wasn't he? He at least looked the same.
I think he looked the same, but I think it's because he... Yeah, well, the wiki says he only shows up in the Curse of Peladon.
Huh.
Well, he looks the same because I think the different costumes are like based on rank. Because it was mentioned that Islier was a lord, whereas the other guy was just kind of a grunt.
Yeah.
What was Sorg?
Yeah.
Spelled with 2 S's.
Yeah, I could have sworn that both of these names had shown up before, but maybe I'm deceiving myself.
The mind robber. Deceiving yourself.
Anyway, we also have Alpha Centauri, who, as the Doctor describes...
Later on, like in episode 2. Because he doesn't meet Alpha Centauri till like the end of episode 1.
Yeah, so the Doctor describes him, her, it, as a hermaphrodite hexapod.
Yeah, to Joe, because Joe thinks it's a she, which I guess she's going off its voice.
Right.
Should we even try?
I feel like we'll regret it.
No regrets.
It sounded kind of like Minnie Mouse. That's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, no. for some behind-the-scenes info, Alpha Centauri was played by a man, but voiced by a woman. So it's sort of like a Dalek situation where the voice actor isn't the actual actor in the costume. But should we try to explain what Alpha Centauri looked like?
I guess we can touch on it. I was reading the production information, and the director was directing the scenes, and this was directed by a woman, learned of Alpha Centauri's costume and was displeased to find it phallic in nature.
Intentionally so, right?
Apparently, or at least even if it wasn't that intentional, it's still like, this is awkward. So she decided to give Alpha Centauri a yellow robe to cover up its shape, so to speak. It has 6 arms.
Right. Which were in themselves vaguely phallic.
Might be where hexapod comes from, now that I think about it.
Huh.
6 arms.
Yeah, you're right.
And then there was Arcturus, who was...
Alpha Centauri, we should also mention, is green, like the Ice Warriors, and has 1 eye. But yeah, we
one really big eye. Yeah, Arcturus was this fish-looking thing inside a dome on a movable electronic device.
Yeah, imagine a bigger Dalek with a clear domed head, inside of which is...
There was a fish.
I thought it looked like... this is going to sound stupid, but I honestly thought it looked like some sort of living kelp.
You mean like...
Like kelp, like the seaweed.
Like the seaweed from,
No.
from the deep?
Except a better character.
Debatable.
Well, okay, we'll touch upon that later. I don't want to spoil anything.
This whole show is a spoiler. We've totally mentioned this before.
Yeah, but this serial is actually good and builds up the suspense without giving away the mystery in 2 seconds.
Well, now that we've described all the characters, we can jump back to the Doctor. The Doctor has seen an Ice Warrior, and he tells Joe that they're like monsters and they've attacked Earth before, and he's encountered them in a previous incarnation, and he doesn't trust them. This becomes a major plot point. So remember that.
So I guess they continue to sneak around the corridors to find out what the Ice Warriors are up to.
Yeah.
And they get caught by some of Peladon's guards and brought into the throne room where all the delegates are being greeted.
Mm-hmm.
I guess since we described the delegates' appearances, we should describe Peladon and Hepesh briefly. They're human. They're not...
well, they look human. They're not.
Yeah, I mean, they're humanoid.
Technically
They're
human.
humanoid. They're played by humans, and Peladon is actually played by... Well, I mean, they're all played by humans, but they're played by non-costumed humans. Peladon is actually played by David Troughton, Patrick Troughton's son.
Yeah.
Who looks nothing like his dad.
Yeah, actually.
Like, if I hadn't
known.
If I hadn't known, I would have never guessed. I mean, if someone had told me, okay, David Troughton plays someone during the Third Doctor's run, I never would have guessed it would be Peladon.
Yeah. Wonder what happened there.
Maybe he looks like his mom. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what Mrs. Troughton looked like.
But yeah, they basically just look like they're wearing vaguely ancient noble robe things. They had this weird hair coloration thing where they dyed a straight line right down the middle of their hair.
We should also describe the Doctor, because he was wearing that cape that had like that plaid checkered design on it.
I didn't really pay attention to that, to be honest.
Really?
I didn't notice it.
It was like the most bizarre cape of the show so far. He was wearing his red coat, which he has been for a while now, but he was wearing a cape that had like green and red plaid on it instead of like a solid red like the other capes do. And I was like, what?
I didn't notice that at all.
The most niche Doctor cosplay possible. That cape from this serial.
What about the toga the Doctor wore in the Romans? You could just
Or
put that on and say you're cosplaying as the First Doctor.
Wow.
Anyway, they get brought into the throne room, and they think they're in for it now, except Peladon is like, well, the delegates from Earth are here. And they're like, yes, that's who we are. The delegates from Earth, Princess Josephine and
Of TARDIS.
And me, the Doctor. And this is where her princess-ish costume comes into effect.
Yeah.
Luckily.
The Doctor claims to be the head delegate, and Josephine is just kind of on a sightsee, I guess. She's just tagging along to lend credibility to their delegation, so to speak. But
yeah, basically as an observer, I think she says.
yeah.
Basically the Ice Warriors imply that they've abandoned the monarchy on their planet, but they've still kept it around for, culture's sake, I guess. And Joe is like, yeah, we've done that on Earth too.
Credit to Joe for picking up on what the Doctor was doing and just immediately adopting the role.
Yeah, for once, Joe doesn't completely ruin the plan right away.
Joe really doesn't ruin anything except for in episode 3 where everything goes wrong in episode 3.
Yeah.
But she was really good up until then. She was good after that.
I'm going to mention now that I kind of didn't like Joe in this serial.
I'm pretty sure it was because of episode 3.
And 2.
Really?
Yeah, her first encounter with Peladon,
I feel like her actions in episode 2 are justified, but we'll talk about that when we finish explaining.
Yeah.
So...
Because this is still episode 1.
Anyway, so... Well, we're almost at the end of episode 1, because now the delegates turn to leave and go to their rooms to kind of get settled in and discuss their views on Peladon joining the Federation. And as they're leaving...
you see... Well, the Peladon has this champion, so to speak, named Grun. Not so to speak, he is the king's champion. Apparently some sort of gladiator or fighter. And you see him sneak off while Peladon is talking to the delegates.
Yeah.
So as the delegates are leaving, there's this precarious statue of Agador, which is... Hepesh kind of explains this. It used to be a living species on Peladon, but it was hunted to extinction, and now it's sort of like just the guardian spirit of Peladon or whatever.
Yeah.
And you see Grun chiseling away at it, and it falls on the delegates as they're leaving. And episode 1 ends on that note.
But episode 2 begins, and the Doctor shoves Islia out of the way. That's a really hard name to say.
Yeah, I thought it was Islia until I read it.
He shoves him out of the way and basically saves his life, and this also becomes a major plot point later.
Yeah.
But he's all like, "Thank you." Hey, it's fun to do the Ice Warrior voice.
Yeah, I guess. The Ice Warriors were kind of awesome in this serial, I'm not gonna lie.
The Ice Warriors and the Doctor were awesome.
And Alpha Centauri. Let's not forget Alpha Centauri.
It was less awesome than the other two, but
it's true.
They were still awesome. A lot of people were awesome in this series.
Sorry, I like the tirade Alpha Centauri went on.
Oh, we'll get there. So episode 2, they go to their rooms to convene, and I guess this is where the Doctor tells Joe about Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, but Joe stays behind with Peladon for a minute first.
Yeah. Peladon calls Joe back.
Right, and he's talking about how he's always surrounded by Hepesh and up until now Torbis, the guy who died in the beginning of 1, and how he doesn't really have any friends, I guess. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have someone from Earth around because his mom was from Earth, and someone who's apparently his age, at least in appearance. We don't really know. But Joe feels she doesn't want to get involved because she's just an observer. And either she's really suddenly really good at playing off or play acting and playing the role, or she's getting really into her role as the princess. I don't know. I kind of started to dislike her for that because I don't know. I feel she gets a little bit too self-righteous into her role as the princess, and maybe lets it go to her head a little bit.
A little bit, but the main point of Peladon's conversation was that he wanted Joe to marry him.
That was later. That's not this conversation. That's their later conversation.
Yeah, but the fact that Joe gets really into it plays a big part in episode 4, because if she hadn't, then basically episode 4 would have fallen apart.
I guess she gives it away whether Peladon believes it or not in episode 4.
I guess, but that's right before they. Okay.
The GTFO.
Anyway, the delegates have gone to their rooms to convene mainly because they've learned of Torbus's death and they believe that the planet is violent and that they think that they're in danger. So they're going to their rooms for safety, so to speak, until they can come to a decision on whether it should join the Federation or not.
Right, and one of the contingencies, I guess, for joining the Federation is you can't attack the delegates who come to your planet.
I mean, that's a good contingency.
Is contingency the right word for that? I don't know. But
maybe.
Either way, yeah, they go back to their rooms, like we said.
And then an alarm goes off, and the doctor's like, whoa, that's an alarm. So he rushes into Arcturus's room and discovers that the life support system has been ripped out, and so the doctor's trying to fix it when the Ice Warriors and Centauri come in, and they're all like, what are you doing, Doctor?
And the doctor plays it all cool, and he's like, the life support system has been ripped out, I'm just trying to fix it.
Yeah, and he specifically tells Joe not to go off somewhere, and she goes off somewhere to the Ice Warriors room, because she's still playing into the doctor's, hey, the Ice Warriors are evil, and they probably did something evil.
Yeah, he thinks that they were the ones who sabotaged the life support unit.
Yes, so Joe actually does find the life support system in the Ice Warriors room, and this is looking pretty bad for the Ice Warriors.
Yeah.
Till Sorg shows up, and he's like,
yep.
What are you doing in our room?
Yeah, so, well, actually, she hides behind the curtain when Zorg comes in, or Sorg. I don't know, it's spelled Sorg, but I thought they pronounced it as Zorg. I don't know.
Zerg.
Anyway, she hides behind the curtain with her feet sticking out.
Yeah.
Come on, some basic stuff, Joe.
But Sorg finds her, and eventually he basically locks her in and goes to Islia to reveal that he found the human woman in their room with the life support system. So to the Ice Warriors, it looks pretty bad for the Doctor, and to the Doctor, it looks pretty bad for the Ice Warriors.
Right. And I guess I'll just mention this now. I really liked how this serial didn't reveal everything right away, because I feel like some serials have revealed things, if not right away, then too early. Because of the point where everything's revealed in this serial, I feel like it was just at the right time to have things play out, not feel drawn out after that. And
yeah.
Because honestly, once things are revealed, it starts to get a little boring because the mystery's no longer there.
Well, I mean, we've had this discussion before, and I think we agreed that you can have a good serial where you reveal everything in the beginning, but to do that, you'd have to, like, throw the Doctor into some inescapable situation and reveal everything about it and have, like, the whole serial be about him trying to escape, or, something similar.
We have had that discussion specifically in the War Games, but even still, I felt this serial did a good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's better to reveal things slowly most of the time. It's like a more tried and true method for keeping your audience engaged.
Anyway,
which, let's be honest, that's what they're doing. They just want to try to keep the audience engaged.
Yeah. Which they do for like 20 years. And then it gets canceled, but anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens when we get there.
So yeah, things are looking pretty bad for each party, and Arcturus is kind of
not
on
helping,
edge.
And not helping.
Yeah, and Alpha Centauri is just freaking out, like it's.
I was about to try to
do
the Alpha Centauri voice.
Well, we haven't done it yet, so
we'll save it for her actual tirade in episode whatever that happened in
4. But yeah. I don't exactly remember what it said during said tirade.
We'll see. So, Grom shows up in the Doctor's room because, so Joe escapes.
Right, she escapes through the window, And there's the sequence where she's on this precarious ledge outside above a drop that goes all the way down the mountain. And she doesn't take her... She's wearing, like, high heels, I guess.
She doesn't take her heels off?
Yeah, which is dumb.
Yeah, well, she didn't take them off when she was, like, running in, whatchamacallit, the Daemons.
Okay, well, I don't wear heels,
I don't think anyone takes their heels off in this show ever.
Yeah, but she was literally on probably a 1 or 2 inch space to stand on, yet she didn't take her shoes off, and basically only the heels were keeping her from falling. Like the whole front part of her foot just wasn't even on solid ground.
Maybe she's just skilled.
Maybe she's just a ninja, I don't know.
No, I agree. It's pretty dumb that she didn't take her heels off.
That's not important, though.
Sorry, Katie Manning. Should have taken your heels off.
But yeah, she escapes, and she escapes to the caverns that I guess they came in from.
Yeah, and then gets recaptured by the Ice Warriors.
Yeah, meanwhile, the Doctor...
Yeah, Grum shows up and is like, no, and the dog's like, oh, come with you, okay.
Yeah, apparently Grun is mute, except for he can make grunts. Maybe that's where his name came from, I don't know.
So he follows him into some other caves, and he's going through, and he...
Those were the same caves, right? It wasn't really specified.
Yeah, I don't think it was specified.
I just assumed that the caves that Joe was in...
I want to say they weren't, though. They weren't the same caves. Because Peladon didn't know about the caves that the Doctor was talking about, but the Doctor and Joe were captured in the beginning by guards of Peladon.
Yeah, we don't know whether those caves in the beginning were the same either. It's really just up in the air. Who knows?
It should have been called the Caves of Peladon.
The Maze of Peladon, especially when Hepesh draws that map and it really is a maze. But anyway... I guess that goes with the whole medieval theme, because weren't a lot of medieval castles designed to be mazes?
Speaking of castles, you should watch this BBC series from December last year called Secrets of the Castle, which is about a group of modern-day people who are trying to build a castle using medieval techniques.
That's pretty interesting.
They've been working on it for like 12 years when these 3 like archaeologists / historians go in for this 6-episode special to kind of live in the castle for 6 months and help them build it. And it's narrated by Paul McGann, who plays the 8th Doctor, so it has relation to Doctor Who, so there you go. You should watch it. It's really interesting. I've seen it, actually.
Okay.
Just wanted to plug that because it's really good, and I think more people should see it because...
All right.
Anyway, the Doctor discovers this furry beast thing, and it runs away from him and accidentally touches the statue, and then Hepesh just shows up out of the shadows like, haha, I caught you committing sacrilege. You're gonna die now.
Right, because apparently it's against the law and against their religion thing, or superstitions, to ever go into the caves.
Or deface the shrine, I guess, because Peladon doesn't know about the caves, but he knows about the shrine.
Right, all the Doctor did, I thought this was slightly comedic, even though it wasn't supposed to be. The Doctor literally just maybe brushes the statue. He's about to touch it, but maybe just barely touches the statue when Hepesh bursts out, and he's like, haha, I got you.
Yeah. So they take him to Peladon, and Peladon's like, I'm sorry, this law has only one punishment, death, and it allows for no defense.
Right, and all the delegates have been brought into the room at this point, along with the Doctor, we should mention.
It's just like, what kind of law doesn't let you defend yourself? What?
Hey, they're on another planet.
What is this, Peladon?
Can't judge their laws by Earth standards. But anyway.
Episode 2 ends with that. He's like,
right.
Kill him.
And episode 3 begins with the caveat here, which is you can actually face somebody in single combat.
Well, no, it begins with Joe pleading with Peladon to let the Doctor live because he didn't know the laws. And then...
Oh, right, yeah.
Peladon's like, there's nothing I can do. And then Joe's like, damn
She goes off on him, basically.
Well, Peladon was a spineless king. He was the worst king possible ever.
Well, I'm not going to deny that. He was a pretty crappy king. But at the same time, I don't like that Joe went off on him because, like I mentioned before, I kind of think she's letting the whole I'm Princess of Earth thing go to her head a little bit. And also,
Consider one thing. Consider the only way Joe is getting home is if the doctor lives.
yeah, I mean, obviously she'd want to do anything within her power to let the doctor live. Not just because he's her only way home, but because, they're friends.
Yeah,
or
that
they're
too.
companions.
But even if you thought Joe was a callous person, she needs the doctor to get home.
But at the same time, I mean, Peladon, he has to abide by the laws. This based on a lot of things in this serial. It's not this kingdom isn't really implied to be like, oh, whatever the king says goes. No, there's laws that the king and royalty seem to have to abide by. Sort of a Magna Carta-ish type thing. And if the king can't abide by the laws, then how is the entire society supposed to stay afloat? And the king has to go by the procedures. He can't just throw everything to
not executing the doctor isn't the only option. He could have provided a stay of execution. He could have still executed the doctor, but he could have waited for the council to finish deciding whether Peladon was going to join the Federation or something. He didn't have to stop the doctor from being executed, but he just immediately jumped to the conclusion that there was nothing he could do.
Well, presumably there wasn't under their laws, and the Federation is revealed to not supposed. It's the Federation basically isn't supposed to interfere with the planet's laws.
Right, but Centauri mentions later that killing a member of the delegation is reason for the Federation to declare war on a planet.
Yeah, exactly. And Peladon
should know this,
I guess. But if
Peladon wants to protect his kingdom, which he later is implied to want to do, and his sole purpose is just to protect the kingdom, the one thing he should do is at least let the doctor decide whether Peladon should join the Federation or not before killing him.
I guess, but at the same time, I guess he was putting his kingdom over the Federation. He wants to join the Federation, but...
Yeah, but that's the exact opposite of what he's doing, because the kingdom is going to be destroyed by the Federation, because the Federation is far more powerful than Peladon alone. And that's why he wants to join the Federation.
Well, he's conflicted at this point over whether Hepesh is right or anyone else is.
It was blatantly obvious Hepesh was sabotaging everything.
Well, you have to remember that Peladon has, I don't want to say been controlled, but I guess been controlled and been accompanied by whatever his name was and Hepesh for basically all his life, and they've sort of been his surrogate rulers. And I guess they were implied to be friends. Maybe
friends
sort
like
of a
these,
father,
who needs enemies?
maybe sort of a father-son relationship, even because his dad was dead.
Well, his dad only died recently, it says, because it had to have been recently for Peladon not to have been crowned king yet.
But still, I mean, based on what happens in 4.
But, I mean, he keeps mentioning how he wants to be a better ruler than his mother and father were, and then all he does is do nothing. He literally does nothing. The whole serial, he does nothing.
Well, I still feel like...
And I think Joe is justified in going off on him for that, because she needs to call him out on it, because he keeps saying he's going to do something, and then he doesn't. Even if he wants to abide by the rules, he says he wants to do something and then doesn't, and what kind of king is that?
When did he do that?
He specifically mentions at the beginning that when he's talking to Joe that he wants to be a better ruler than his parents were, and that's why he wants Joe to marry him.
We forgot about that, actually.
Because he wants someone to rule at his side, and he wants to be a better ruler than his parents were, and then he does nothing for the whole serial to show that he's a better ruler than his parents.
Well,
if I was on Peladon, I would vote against having him crowned king.
Well, first of all, we don't know what kind of rulers his parents were. Second of all, I think it's the right thing to do to uphold the laws of the planet as the king instead of... I mean, you can't just buck all tradition.
I mean, but you should at least be reasonable in the fact that the law provides no defense. You should realize that that's dumb and at least give the doctor reason to defend himself.
Yeah, but even if the law is dumb, you can't just be like, well, I'm not going to follow it because it's dumb. Even if you're king, apparently it's implied that there are procedures that you have to go through to change these laws.
But, see, the doctor even mentions the caves, and Peladon's like, what caves? He wants to learn something, then Hepesh is like, no, don't believe him, and he's like, okay, I won't believe him. He takes the Hepesh's word over the condemned man.
Hepesh, it's happening again. Anyway, if I was him, I'd believe Hepesh over anyone else in the room.
Really?
Yes.
I wouldn't.
Well, he's known Hepesh.
He's
For
known
longer.
Hepesh for a long time, but it's implied that Peladon wants to join the Federation. If Peladon wants to join the Federation, the least he could do is listen to the Doctor. Even if he kills the Doctor in the end, the least he could do is listen to his defense. Like I said, he does nothing. And I think Peladon is one of the worst characters for that.
Well, I completely disagree, and I think Joe is definitely being way too haughty.
I think Joe's outburst in episode 3 also comes from the whole marriage thing, because the way Peladon phrased it, because he's also a terrible orator, is that he basically transitioned straight from, hey, joining the Federation would be cool, into, hey, want to get married? And I think Joe going off on him like, oh, so you just want to get married so you can join the Federation? Like, I think that was correct. Even if it was not what Peladon was going for, I think the way he worded it implied that it was, and I don't blame Joe for interpreting it that way. And then when Peladon then does nothing to save the Doctor, I think she's justified in going off on him.
Well, okay, I just want to say something that is kind of related. The fact that Joe possibly takes into account the marriage proposal in going off on Peladon might how do I want to phrase this? Should have probably alerted everyone in the room that she wasn't actually royalty or a princess or a delegate. No, she wasn't a delegate in the first place, but, a political figure, because to someone like that, a political marriage would probably be normal and you'd probably just resign yourself to it.
Yeah, but it's not a political marriage sanctioned by, the Federation, which if she was a princess, she would be supporting. I think even still, Peladon is just like, hey, want to get married? Because he's like, my mother was an Earthwoman. His main motivation to get married to Joe is A, my mother was an Earthwoman, and B, it would help me join the Federation. So he's still even implying he wants to join the Federation then with marriage to Joe, and then he's going to go and kill the Doctor? Fucking fantastic.
Yeah, well, I still don't think Joe is in position to criticize him, especially when... I hesitate to use this term because of the upstart Silurian, but she's kind of just like an upstart. I feel like she's not in a place to criticize him on anything political.
Maybe not, but I think she had a right to go off on him. And I think doing so was the right thing to do. Because even if Peladon's sole motivation was to get married to Joe, he would have listened to the Doctor. Because he would have realized that the Doctor was Joe's friend. And if he wanted to get married to Joe, he was going to have to do something for the Doctor.
Well, I think it sort of just comes down to, the whole conundrum. I mean, when you boil it down, it's basically like the whole, do I obey these laws that I know are unjust? Or because obeying the law is the right thing to do as a citizen or political figure? Or do I...
You should tell that to the American government.
Buck them. And I think obeying the laws is more important than... especially for a king, than just one person's life.
I mean, obeying the laws is correct, but you gotta set precedent for something. If it's an unjust law, you have to set precedent to do something about it, and by doing nothing, you're definitely not doing that, and you're not gonna be remembered as a good person.
Yeah, there's still procedures you need to go through to change it. So this situation would possibly bring that into attention.
Right,
you can't just be like, well, we're changing it now because of this situation.
I'm not saying you should have. I'm saying you should have at least waited before just saying, hey, let's kill the Doctor, and taken some time to consider the fact that maybe the Doctor has a defense or something, or even consider the fact that killing the Doctor may have ramifications far beyond what he's just immediately considering.
Well, hey, the law is the law.
You should have. Well, the law doesn't say you have to be executed immediately, as far as we know. He could have just waited a couple years before executing him. I mean, if we're going to go down the route that we don't know what the laws are, we can just say the law said he didn't have to be executed immediately, and Peladon made the change to have him executed immediately. I mean, you can't disagree with that statement.
Yeah, but you can't just say, well, we don't know it, so that's the case anyway.
But I still think Peladon was the worst written character in the serial, and I think he was completely useless, and I wouldn't have voted for him to be crowned king.
Well, I think the same thing about Joe, except the crowned king part, because that doesn't really make sense, but... Either way, we should probably get back to what actually happens.
That 10-minute rant. I think Joe was justified, and I'm just going to leave it at that.
I don't. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. But,
So the Doctor's going to be combat executed now. Trial by combat.
Right, apparently if he lives, they're going to let him live. Like, I mean, he's going to face Grun in single combat, and if he lives, then he lives, I guess.
Peladon does change the law, since I would assume trial by combat would mean someone would have to die, and he just lets the doctor live, even though he doesn't kill Grun. But anyway.
Yeah, I guess. You know, I like I said before, Peladon is kind of a shitty ruler. I just think he was justified in that one case. And other cases, but either way, the doctor has to face Grun. So they go into this pit thing.
Yeah.
And there's a combat scene. This is the only, like we said before, this serial doesn't feel drawn out at all. It always feels like there's something pertinent to the plot happening. Mm-hmm. This is the only scene that possibly could have been shortened. Not that I would have wanted it to, but I mean,
the best part was when Grun picked up that log and tried to beat the doctor with it and missed.
Well, I'll admit that the fight scene was a little boring. There was no music playing, and not that there needed to be, but it was also zoomed out a lot and didn't really show the fight up close, presumably because these were stunt doubles. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the time it was sort of a top-down viewpoint between the two combatants, which reminds me of, like, I don't know, old video games, like Atari and whatnot.
Episode 3 ends with... so Grum loses his weapon to the doctor disarms him, and then Hepesh throws down a sword to Grun, and if Peladon didn't see that and realize Hepesh was a total backstabber, then I don't know what was going to bring him up.
Maybe that was allowed. I don't know. Who knows? I don't think we can really speculate.
Worst trial ever.
No, not worse than the War Games.
The War Games, they at least gave the doctor a defense.
Yeah, but it was less interesting.
Because, it was only like 5 minutes in the War Games. This was an entire episode.
Yeah, at least he got to fight for his life, whereas in the War Games, they're just like, haha, you're guilty.
Yeah, well, the Time Lords are all-powerful and super overpowered, so...
I meant the one in the beginning, with what's his name?
Oh, he was also all-powerful. I mean, they were controlling the War Games.
Anyway, so eventually...
Episode 3 ends with Arcturus preparing to fire a weapon at either the doctor or someone else.
Well, yeah, we forgot to mention that the doctor overpowers Grun.
Yeah.
And starts to choke him out using the nets.
Yeah.
But then decides to spare his life.
Yeah, Arcturus is about to fire, and then Sorg fires, and episode 3 ends, and like, who did they shoot? And episode 4 begins, and it turns out that Sorg has killed Arcturus to save the doctor. And the doctor leaves... Right. The doctor leaves Grun alive and is like, yeah, I'm not going to kill you. You can still be champion. And then apparently this is allowed.
That's sort of a discrepancy here. I don't know. I wouldn't have sanctioned that.
It just skips to the doctor like in his room with Joe, I think. Or no, with the Ice Warriors talking about...
Well, yeah, Joe is with the other delegates.
Happened, yeah.
But yeah, were you a little bit confused about what happens at the end of 3/beginning of 4? I couldn't tell who shot who, or if anyone actually was shot, or if it ended on the cliffhanger that like, they're going to be shot. I was a little confused on that. I think
Arcturus was going to kill the doctor, and then Sorg killed Arcturus, and I think they mentioned that they had figured out Arcturus was working with Hepesh to sabotage the delegation.
Yeah, I know. I knew that.
And that's why they killed Arcturus when they saw he had pulled out a gun.
Yeah. No, I that was all cleared up after the fact, but just while it was happening, I was like, whoa, this is kind of strange. And they ended it on the cliffhanger like, the doctor's about to be shot, but I wasn't, at the end of 3 at least, I wasn't exactly sure who was about to shoot him.
I think that was supposed to be the cliffhanger, was not knowing who was going to shoot whom.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then.
But yeah, Joe talks with the Ice Warriors and discovers that they figured out Arcturus was in on it. Now Centauri goes off on some tirade.
The Doctor also reveals the entire plot with Hepesh and Arcturus being in league, and that Arcturus's planet, or I guess Arcturus, since they're named after their planets or systems or whatever, isn't rich in minerals like Peladon is, and that he was...
We forgot a scene in episode 3 where the Doctor goes to hypnotize the beast in the caves and
Right.
realizes it's
Agador, right?
Agador.
The beast is basically Hepesh raised I guess their species name is Agador.
Yeah.
I guess,
Well, actually, going back even further, Hepesh gives the doctor basically free leave to just escape and draws him a map and is like, yeah, just escape. And the doctor's like, yeah, okay, I don't trust you. But the map leads him into the caves and then he hypnotizes Agador.
Right.
And then you were saying, Agador is maybe the species name, I don't know.
Yeah, so Hepesh has been raising one secretly underneath the castle, unbeknownst to Peladon. There's something else I was going to say too.
Then Joe busts in. It's like, Doctor, no! And then I was like, wow, Joe, really?
Yeah, she ruined that like she usually does.
Naive.
There was also the various bits of dialogue throughout this entire serial where Hepesh makes it perfectly clear that
he's backstabbing Peladon.
Well, also he makes it perfectly clear to the delegates that they're probably all going to die because of the Curse of Agador.
Yeah, and they don't believe him. So anyway, yeah, the trial combat happens, and then the doctor, so the doctor...
He goes off on his own.
Yeah, he tells Joe to convince the delegates to vote for Peladon joining the Federation while he goes off into the caves.
Right, and before he does so, he makes the whole reveal about the plot between Arcturus and Hepesh, where Arcturus wants the minerals, and...
Yeah.
And I guess he just deduced all of that. I mean, it's semi-understandable, but I thought there were some bits of information in that whole speech of his that I was just like, how did you come to that conclusion, Doctor?
Well, the Ice Warriors figured it out too, because they were the ones who killed Arcturus.
Yeah, the Ice Warriors at least figured out something was going on, and that's understandable. Like, you'd figure out something's going on, but the whole thing about the minerals and all of that, like, how did you deduce that?
Yeah, so the doctor goes off to get Agador, and Alpha Centauri is going off about how there's no precedent for this situation, and it doesn't know if it wants to vote yes because there's no precedent. It's just like, how do you think precedent is created, Alpha Centauri? Like, come on!
I think eventually they just tell Alpha Centauri to shut up.
Yeah, because it's going off in a high-pitched voice, like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Like, oh no! It's gonna kill us all! It's like, no! Stop!
There's the Alpha Centauri voice. We're bound to do it sooner or later.
So much hair pulling happened in this episode. Like, what are you doing?
Except Alpha Centauri didn't even have hair.
Anyway, so Joe is like, yeah, we should vote yes, and Islir is like, are you even a human, princess?
And she's like, yes. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they just believe her for about a minute, and then they're like, so where's your shit? And she's like, in space, yeah. And then I'm like, wait, but didn't the doctor mention they crash landed like when they got there in the delegation room? And then 2 minutes later, Joe also mentions their communicator was broken because they crash landed, and the Ice Warriors just accept this as fact.
Well, Arcturus / Hepesh / anyone who's in on it with them has broken Centauri's and the Ice Warriors' communicator.
Yeah.
So they need to use Joe's, and she's like, well, it's broken, sorry.
Yeah, we crashed, but you just said, what? But the Ice Warriors just brushed this off.
Again, another situation where you kind of get an inkling that Joe isn't a real princess, but again, no, that doesn't happen. Even when she straight up reveals it at the end, we don't know if Peladon believes her or not. Either way.
Well, I think he does. I think he says it doesn't matter. But anyway, so the doctor hypnotizes Agador. He has this weird hypnosis device he just built or carries with him.
That shows up the first... I wish they would have played that into the banter at the beginning between Joe and the doctor while they're still in the TARDIS, because he just pulls it out of nowhere the first time he hypnotizes Agador.
Yeah, magical plot device.
But he does so again, like he was planning to do to begin with, when Joe comes out of nowhere. And he takes Agador up to the throne room to show Peladon that, hey, Hepesh has been raising an Agador underneath the castle, unbeknownst to you.
And Hepesh is like, no, don't believe him. He's an alien, don't believe him. And then he's like, I control Agador, watch.
Meanwhile, we forgot to mention war is basically broken out between the forces that are loyal to Hepesh and the forces that are loyal to Peladon. And Grun has changed sides.
Yeah, I guess because the doctor
think
spared him. He goes with the doctor to get Agador. He comes back with the doctor to the throne room and just kind of stands there at that point.
Yeah, he changed sides, right? That I wasn't misinterpreting that.
Yeah, no, he did.
Because
he first motioned to the doctor to follow him when they were in the courtroom in episode 4, and then he followed him, and that's when he hypnotized Agador to take him back to the...
Yeah, it was just a little confusing.
But anyway, Agador attacks Hepesh instead of the doctor like Hepesh wanted, and kills him!
Yep. And...
Peladon is just like, he was a friend... And then that's that. He's just dead.
Hepesh says he was trying to do what was best for the planet, which, I don't know, I guess we'll talk about this now. I liked Hepesh's motivation, to be honest. He wasn't just like, I'm going to destroy everything and rule everything villain, kind of. He was trying to do what he thought was best for the planet and kingdom.
I guess, but he went about it completely the wrong way.
He was somewhat working in his own interest.
And he went about it completely the wrong way. Like, just killing members of the delegation? Brilliant way to get them to leave. And don't say he didn't try that, because that statue in episode 1...
He did. You can't deny it. But, I don't know, I guess he just thought that Peladon was bound to join the Federation unless he stepped in and took drastic measures, which I can understand. So I thought he was a good villain.
He was a good villain, but I don't agree he was doing the right thing. I think, he was doing what he thought was right. I think he went about it the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean...
He was misguided in his attempts.
That's what you want in a villain, right? Instead of just like, haha, I'm gonna rule the universe.
Ideally, you would want a villain that is doing what they think is right, but is also doing it in a way that seems justified, so you're forced into thinking maybe the villain isn't the bad guy. That's what I would think a good villain would be. In this, he was a villain because he went about killing people. Like, let's be honest, that's the only thing that classifies him as a villain. He was doing what he thought was right, which is like what anyone would do, but what classified him as a villain was him killing people. Like, that's kind of a cop-out way of writing him as a villain.
Well, if he hadn't... Well, what would you want him to do that classified him as a villain?
He should have been more manipulative and not more murderous. He should have just... I mean, he basically had Peladon under his thumb the whole serial anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know. I still feel he had a good motivation.
Yeah, he had a good... I mean, I agree. He had a good motivation. I'm just saying he went about it the wrong way, and I don't think that makes him the best villain. Makes him a good villain, but
I think
doesn't
he's
make
one
him
of the best villains in a while.
In a while, yeah, but he's not the best.
But, yeah, I mean, in his opinion or mind, I presume, I'm not claiming to be a mind reader of fictional characters, but, you know, I guess killing people to quote unquote save his planet is what he thought was the best thing to do. And maybe under drastic circumstances, you know, you would be led to believe that. But who knows? I'll never have to make that decision.
So you think. You don't know your future.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be...
Hey, you never know. Maybe aliens come down and they give you one button. They're like, okay, if you push this button, 5 people within a 10-mile radius will die and we'll leave the planet alone. But if you don't, we'll kill you alone.
I do it.
Well, Kiyan's true colors have shown. Remember, listeners. Remember this day.
Don't live within a 10-mile radius of me.
What if instead it was just, we'll kill your parents and anyone close to you?
No, I don't know. I'd think about it. This is becoming a podcast of moral ambiguity. Hey, you gotta look out for number 1. Which I guess isn't what Hepesh was doing. Either way, on Hepesh's deathbed, or death floor rather, because he dies on the floor, he says that he was just doing what he thought was right, but perhaps he went about it the wrong way. And then he dies.
And then Peladon is like, well, he was a friend. And then Peladon changes the law and doesn't kill or execute or hand down any punishment to any of Hepesh's troops.
Well, like I said, I agree that Peladon is a pretty crappy king. It's just in that one situation where he upholds what he actually should do as king that I liked him.
I didn't like him specifically because he upheld there, and he was all flip-floppity because he didn't uphold it sometimes and upheld it sometimes.
Well, here
that was my problem with him.
Well, I also like him because he decides to manipulate information and hide everything. I guess this is semi-implied because it wasn't actually disclosed what he was going to do, and it wasn't really delved into, but he implies that he's going to erase all the events of Hepesh's plot and everything from the public, which I like because government should always manipulate information.
So why didn't he just manipulate the Doctor into telling him information about the tunnels in Agador instead of just killing him?
Well, I mean, he should manipulate information from his public and hide things from the general populace.
I specifically disliked Peladon because he was flip-floppity. And that's what makes him a terrible leader and B, a terrible person. But anyway.
Well, I liked him. We also didn't mention that he was like he was wearing like some sort of skirt / shorts or whatever, and he was rocking the Link look.
I've never played Legend of Zelda. Anyway, the council had voted yes for Peladon to join the Federation, so they're going to join the Federation. Peladon's going to be crowned king, much to my displeasure. The Doctor and Joe are hanging out, and they're like, hey, look, we got the TARDIS back, and Joe's like, yay!
Even if Peladon didn't join the Federation, he'd still have to be crowned king.
Yeah.
Like of his planet.
Yeah, but I still don't think he should have. I think he was a terrible king, but anyway. Would have been even worse had Hepesh succeeded in the end, though, because he literally wanted Peladon to be his sub-ruler. He basically wanted a puppet government at the end, and he basically admitted it to Peladon. He's like, either you're going to rule like I want you to rule, or the line of Peladon ends here. He said that straight up to Peladon.
Yeah.
And Peladon was just like, okay.
Yeah, well, Peladon forgave him. You know, they were best buddies. I don't know, I liked Peladon.
I didn't, and we're never going to agree on that.
Anyway, the coronation is about to take place, and the TARDIS is back.
Yeah. The Doctor's about to go with Joe to see the coronation. Well, the Doctor goes to check to see if the coronation is happening, and then Peladon comes in, talks to Joe about having her marry him again. And she's like, well...
Nah, no.
She doesn't say that. She gets very conflicted. Reveals that she's not a princess, and Peladon's like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Well, see, this is... Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but, you know, she does straight up say, like, I'm not a princess. But I was wondering whether Peladon maybe thought she was saying she thought she wasn't... I'm wording this poorly, but... thought she wasn't up to the task of being princess. Not like straight up, literally, I'm not a princess.
The way I interpreted, she was saying she wasn't a princess.
Yeah,
because she couldn't reveal that she was also a time traveler. So she could only reveal what would make sense to Peladon.
Yeah, she specifically does reveal I'm not a princess. She straight up says that.
Yeah.
But I thought Peladon was sort of interpreting it as I'm not fit to be princess. Instead of literally I'm not a princess. But I don't know. We can't really tell.
Anyway, she's like, nah, well, I'll see you after the coronation. And then the Doctor comes back. He's like, this is awkward. And then he's like, yeah, the coronation's about to happen. They're like freaking out where you are, Peladon. And he's like, I better go. The Doctor's revealed that he saw Queen Victoria get crowned at this point. And Joe's like, name dropper. And he's like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, they're apparently going to stay and watch the coronation before they go. So they're about to go and do that. Then the actual Earth delegate shows up. And she's like, all the other delegates, well, Islier, Slor, and Centauri, don't believe that she's the Earth delegate, understandably. And she's mad, also understandably. And the Doctor and Joe see this, and they're all, well, we should probably leave now. Yep.
And Joe was like, yeah, best I be leaving. She bails on King Peladon. But also, we forgot to mention the line where Joe's like, so you didn't actually get it working, did you? He's like, nope. And she's like, Time Lords? And he's like, yeah, probably.
Right, the Time Lords sent them to this planet. Presumably.
Yeah, it's implied that the Time Lords sent them to that planet.
Unless everything they thought at the end was wrong.
Because the Doctor thought it was suspicious that they arrived on Peladon right as this crisis was occurring. Like, at the precise moment that the crisis was about to come to a head, so he thinks it's the Time Lords. Then they hop on the TARDIS and it dematerializes when the delegates show up, and then it ends.
Yeah. I mean, not that the Doctor and co haven't coincidentally shown up at points of crisis at other times, but, you know, whatever.
Well, I mean, they weren't on Earth at this point, so I think it's more likely that...
Yeah, it's true, but you can't deny that they've coincidentally shown up at times of crisis.
Yeah.
Either way, I thought this was one of the best serials in a while, for the reasons we mentioned previously. You know, it kept up the mystery for as long as it needed to, for a good amount of time. It made you want to watch more, and I especially liked how they introduced the Ice Warriors and sort of... not introduced, but they brought back the Ice Warriors here as
allies.
Allies, but also as they set them up in such a way that you're suspicious of them.
Yeah, it played off of the previous serials that they featured in, but then was like, nope, you're wrong.
You kind of get the gist that they're not actually the real antagonists.
Yeah, well, they say that as of when the serial was set, the Ice Warriors had basically banned war on their planet. We're a peaceful race now.
Yeah. I don't know if they come... I know they come back in the reboot because you've said so, but I don't know if they come back before then. But we'll see. Maybe they'll be allies of the Doctor again. I'd find that pretty interesting, you know, the enemy-turned-ally thing.
Well, and, Brian Hayles has only written Ice Warrior serials so far, so if we see another serial written by Brian Hayles, I'm going to say it's not a bad bet that the Ice Warriors probably come back.
But I don't know. As I said before, as a complete 180 from how I felt before, I really liked the Ice Warriors in this serial.
Yeah, because it was interesting to see an enemy turn into, quote-unquote, an ally, so to speak.
Yeah, they were sort of also the upstanding delegates, too. Alpha Centauri, I guess, was, but it was freaking out, and Arcturus was, in his own league there, or in league with Hepesh, rather. But, I don't know, they felt like, out of all the delegates, they would be the Doctor's biggest allies.
Yeah.
Which I liked. And,
Alpha Centauri comes back, we know that much, so...
I don't know, I just hope to see Islir again, he was pretty cool. Sorg is lovable henchman.
Like the other Ice Warriors.
I just liked him for some reason.
Because he was like the only rational character in this serial. He was like, the Doctor couldn't have done it because, he wasn't here and he saved Arcturus, and then, it doesn't make sense, and he saved my life, so, I'm going to try to save his, kind of in debt to him. The only rational guy in the whole serial besides maybe the Doctor, and then, I don't know.
Don't even say Joe.
I was about to say Arcturus.
Oh. Yeah, Arcturus was pretty rational. He was a backstabber, but he was rational. Yeah. In case you hadn't already guessed, I really hate what Joe does in this serial, but...
I hate what Peladon does.
Whether or not... Even disregarding the fact that I think I liked Peladon, even if I didn't, I still don't think Joe would have been in the right. But either way, I don't think we should get back into that. We've discussed that enough. I'm
not sure if it's a good sign or a bad sign that we disagree so adamantly about two characters in a serial. I'm not sure if that's an element of bad writing or good writing.
Well, does it have to be one or the other?
I mean, no,
you can disagree, and it doesn't mean that the writing is either bad or good. And it's not like...
I think it would imply, because if you've written a character that's interpretable in so many ways, you either didn't characterize your character strong enough, or you characterize them so strongly that their motivations get lost.
But it's not like a set-in-stone thing that it's written badly if two people agree, or it's written badly if two people disagree.
I mean, no, but the fact
We're
that
disagreeing on this now, too.
the fact that their characters are so polarizing. I mean, you can disagree on characters and things and have it be like an okay serial, but I think the fact that these two characters were so polarizing in this serial that there's no in between. You either love them or hate them. I think is a product of something.
Well, I don't love Peladon. I just think he was doing the right thing for the most part, and I did agree that he was kind of a crappy ruler.
Well, that's for the fans to decide whether it's good or bad writing, and it's for the fans to decide if Peladon was good or bad, and if Joe was in the right or wrong. And believe me, I'm not saying what she said was right, but I'm saying she was right to stand up to Peladon. But anyway, note about the Time Lords. So, the weird thing about the Time Lords is that they put the second Doctor on trial and then condemn him to death for interfering in history, but then while the third Doctor's run is going, they seem to send the third Doctor a lot to interfere with history, basically breaking their own policy, right? Turns out that's why the CIA was invented by Mr. Robert Holmes, who you may remember wrote The Crotons as well as Spearhead from Space and a variety of other serials, who later become script editor, but he realized that this was a major issue with the characterization of the Time Lords, so he invented the Celestial Intervention Agency as kind of a group of Time Lords that are like clandestine interference policers, and he basically retconned it into being the CIA who sent the Doctor to whatchamacallit in Colony in Space, and he basically also retconned it to be the CIA in this one, so just wanted to make a note of that. Retcon.
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I don't think the planet in Colony in Space actually had a name. I don't remember if we mentioned that in the episode itself. Pretty sure it was just called the planet.
I think I had a name. Actually, I'm fairly certain we mentioned the name in the episode.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Oops, it's not.
I'm just remembering.
It's not the Colony in Space. It's just Colony in Space, wasn't it?
Yeah. Apparently so.
Fairly certain it. Yeah, it was Yaxarius. It was only mentioned once. Remember,
right,
we mentioned that it was
that
only mentioned once.
Yeah.
Because we were like, we didn't know if it had a name or not. But yeah, retcons.
Oh, right. We should also mention that Amazonia, the actual Earth delegate who shows up at the end, returns in prose, and it's revealed that Mavic Chen is actually her successor.
Little throwback there to Dalek Invasion, the Dalek's Master Plan.
Not that they were writing this serial to be that, but apparently someone turned it into that in prose.
Well,
so I mean,
they do a lot of weird things in prose. Like, remember Inferno, the alternate universe?
Yeah.
Do you remember basically who had been elected leader of England in the alternate universe? They they disposed the Queen and they elected someone to be like ruler, right?
I guess.
Someone retconned that into being the third Doctor of that universe, and also retconned the planet into not being destroyed and basically just being annihilating like half the world and leaving the rest in basically ruins, and people still live there.
All right. Hey, if it makes for a good story, who knows? But it probably doesn't.
Well, I mean, actually, it seemed interesting because it was part of a line of Seventh Doctor novels where the Seventh Doctor gets thrown back in time and replaces his third incarnation in where serials from the Third Doctor's era had been changed by, like, I think either the Master or someone had, like, changed an event and it changed the course of history, and the Doctor had been thrown back to try to prevent the change.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the novels was Doctor Who and the Silurians. The change was that the brig doesn't destroy the Silurians at the end. And the novel is about how the Silurians basically took over the world, and the Brigadier is now leading this band of guerrilla fighters who basically just the remnants of UNIT trying to take back the world because the Silurians took over and are basically ruling and have killed off most of the humans.
I guess that does sound pretty interesting. Which brings up something I wanted to mention, and we've mentioned this in previous serials. The brig hasn't really been doing much, and here, he's back on Earth while Joe and the Doctor are on Peladon.
Well, the brig didn't even show up in this serial, so I think we can give him a pass for this serial.
Well, all I'm saying, and all I'm gonna say here, is that I hope he at least gets one serial where he has some time in the sun before he's done with. What? That's an expression, right? Like time of day, time in the sun.
I've heard time of day. Never heard time in the sun before.
Huh.
Maybe you just coined a phrase.
Either way, I'm just hoping there's at least one serial where he plays a prominent role before he leaves. I don't think that's too much to ask.
Watch it be the serial where Joe leaves.
Well, I know when Joe leaves, because I spoiled it for myself, and I know when the Master comes back.
So do I. But, I guess one final note on the serial before we transition into the ending is that this serial has the distinction of being the first in Doctor Who's history to be aired out of production order. This serial was actually produced after the serial we'll be watching next week, the Sea Devils, but was aired before it.
Did they change that, or did they plan it?
No, I think they planned that because they actually specifically asked Brian Hayles to write this serial so that it could be filmed on a set with no location filming because they thought that the Sea Devils would run over on budget. So they wanted this serial to be a lot lower budget so they could also air it earlier.
It's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's why they set it all in the castle. And we didn't mention this, but way back in episode 1, the mountainous scene was most likely a model, I thought.
This serial featured no on-location filming, so it probably was a model.
Yeah. Either that or... Well, I guess the close-up shots were just an elaborate set, and the scenes of the whole mountain were models.
Yep. So that wraps up The Curse of Peladon, which also comes back in audio dramas and prose, if you didn't know that already.
There's another TV story
with
Peladon too.
I think it's called The Monster of Peladon.
Yeah.
I don't know when that comes, but yeah, Peladon shows up again, so we'll see.
I wonder who the monster of Peladon is.
Peladon? King?
Well, no, I thought it was just obvious it'd probably be Agador.
Yeah, I was making a joke.
Oh. All right.
Anyway, email us. Do you have strongly worded rants about Peladon and Joe?
Do them in Centauri's voice and record it and send it to us.
And then we'll play it on the podcast, I guess? I mean, yeah, you can do that. That's the doctor at decorativevegetable.com. If you're a new listener to the show, since we just got ourselves into the Doctor Who Podcast Alliance, we're not usually this heated in discussion, in arguments, but I think it's a good change of pace, actually, and I really enjoyed it. Not that I'm ever going to be doing it again. And also check out our YouTube channel at Trust Your Doctor on YouTube. And also, I think probably the 3 Doctors episode will be a video episode, so make sure you're subscribed to see that. And that's about that. Check us out on iTunes and leave a rating if you liked it.
And definitely check us out on Facebook, like us on Facebook, and like we said earlier, next time we're watching the Sea Devils, so until then, the end.